Okay. So here I have my table set up. And this is pretty much, I'm just going to go through kind of real quick my typical, kind of how I would start a day and the basics. Let me see if yeah, here we go. Okay, pretty much the basics of what I would set up. 2 drop cloths, my paper hangers table, which is, I can show all this too, but you get the trestles. The main thing is it packs up fairly small and you can tuck it into a truck nicely. You can see I got all my lots of measurements from random jobs and whatnot, but it is basswood, so you can cut on it, and then it's supposed to, not really get all marred up, and it will, last a long time for trimming, table trimming and all that. But pretty much it has fold-out trestles. You can do 3, 4, 5 boards on the top here. But yeah, let's just go into what I would call this is like my 90% kind of go-to right here, without going too in-depth on a lot of products. Guards, primer, pretty much, like I said, I think this is pretty much regarded as the best stuff. And I can do a whole nother one on, there's probably 4 or 5 primers really that we kind of get into, but for the most part, if I had to just grab one, I would go with Guards. And Guards pretty much shines on the flatter the surface. So bare drywall mud, super flat paint, all that stuff. This is it's going to give you a hard, shiny surface. So part of that is if you did have to double cut, hopefully you're not cutting through the actual hard surface, and then you want your paste to adhere, and then 3, you want to be able to take it off the wall. So the main reason to prime is so for whatever reason, if you had to get it off, you can get it off. And I know a lot of people don't prime, they just go with it. Mainly the thought is, well, they ain't ever coming back to take it off, right? But I'm sure a lot of people have seen, if you go to pull it off and it starts pulling the drywall paper off itself, then you're in for a real mess. And to be honest, you might want to just stop, prime over the wallpaper, and go with that, because it could be a real mess if it's not been primed and it's just pulling off sheetrock paper. Okay, I don't want to get down, go down too deep on some of these. So, primer, just get the Guards, don't worry about it, be done. That would be available. I don't know what stores you're supposed to mention on here or not, but so you got your 2 main paint stores. You got the blue SW, and then this would be more available at the red BM, I guess, paint store, commercial type paint store. They usually will have that available. And then your other typical hardware, your local friendly hardware stores, they usually stock the Guards too. They seem to have a partnership with those type of products. There's like 4 or 5 you could probably use. And then Okay, here we got the gray, Bullseye. I like the gray. This is for sure not my go-to. It's just, it's an option, and you can get it almost anywhere. Maybe not the gray. Gray is harder to find, but you can get the white almost anywhere. So if it's a situation where you're like, hey, have the painters prime the walls, and they're like, well, what do we use? What do we use? I just tell them Bullseye and just be done with it, because they usually have it. And Bullseye white is just fine. And if they paint it ahead of time, it dries super good. I've never had a problem with Bullseye. So, but it's not my go-to. I wouldn't use it every day, but definitely if painters are ahead of you and you can get it primed ahead of time, you can tell them that. Maybe they got that. But there's this product, and then there's also the Roman, the green bucket, which would be sold at where this is sold, the blue SW paint store. So, okay, so let's go through it real quick. Also, the reason I got the gray, if you have a darker colored paper, you can use the gray to maybe help with the seams a little bit, but there's so much more to that. Like almost every paper will tell you to tint your primer the color of the background material of the paper, and that's almost never the case. You're just simply installing on white or, you know, the light gray everybody's using, or like beige, you know, tan. So usually you're installing on light colors. That's just how it is. And very simply, just don't let your seams separate and you won't have a huge problem. But okay, we're gonna go back through it. Boom, guards, 90% of the time. Just get it, don't worry about it. Plus it dries quick. You can use guards same day. Of course, they'll always recommend drying, waiting overnight. Yes, that is wonderful and ideal if you can do it. So, but what I do, geez, I don't want to go too crazy on like talking about certain products, but what I do is, we'll go into that later, but it can be done same day. Ideally, paint it the day before, you set your table up, start cutting your patterns, finish the next day. That would be great. Okay, now we're going into what I would go to, same thing, 90% of the time, 90% of the time, maybe 80%. Roman 880 works for nearly everything. Just get it, don't worry about it. So right here, these two products, if you don't know what you're doing, I can almost promise you, you get those two and that's it, you're done, be done with it. But Roman 880, good product, super light, goes on really nice. I mean, it's nice and like creamy, wonderful stuff. And this would just be my sort of catch-all bucket, right? Seam rollers, couple rags, some other stuff. This, I'll go in depth on this type of stuff, you know, for cutting edges or grass cloth in corners and along ceilings. You can use a product like that. Got your, this would be what I use for trimming on the table. Couple rollers. Okay, let's look at my typical pouch setup. Woo, yeah. And I do carry a super cheap tiny tape measure. Like, you know, you do this sort of look. Big monster tape measure. It's heavy, it's very heavy. So I just use super cheap, and I'll have like a couple more things. So yeah, here we go. I'm just gonna kind of lay it out like what my typical look would be. So super light tape. I love this pouch. It just happens to be the right size, and it has been incredible. So I got scissors. I carry 2 knives all the time. So this is pretty much the standard in our industry. The standard knife right here. So I carry 2. You got your snap off blade. Anybody who's used these, once you take the back off and try to empty it and reuse it, it kind of falls apart. So you can just, there's just so many more things to talk about, but you can just tape the back and then, yeah, just keep reusing it. Then you just cut this back off, you empty all your blades out, I tape it up, boom, fits back in there. We'll go into all that, maybe later stuff like actual, let's see, let me dive in here. Okay, anyways, jeez. Okay, so we got a stack of blades. This would be your typical snap-off blades. Okay, I got a little system for everything. So I take the new ones out of that side, the top side, and I'll put the used ones in this side, sort of as a system. I say used. When they get down to about like that, I swap them out because they just get crummy, and the last couple snap-offs I don't really worry about. So when they get kind of short like that, I just replace them. It's just way better to have something to work with, because when you're cutting, you're probably going to have it out like that, to be honest. Rarely, for whatever reason, am I doing that. It's usually about like that, to be honest. So, but we'll go all, just it's a lot, there's a lot. Okay, so typical, and then I'll usually, this isn't the exact screwdriver, but I just put it in here. Usually I'll have some sort of screwdriver that you can, it's got a straight blade and or a regular and a Phillips. So usually I'll carry that, essentially for switch blades. That's really it. But that's not the exact one. That's just, oh, here it is. Okay. Huh. So here's the exact one I use. Fits in here nicely, pretty snug, and it has, you know, the multi. So it has the little, trying to do all this one-handed, you know, little tips you can switch around, do what you want. Mainly for switch plates, and you'll have to change out a lot of sconces and essentially the fixture above the vanity. That's what you're going to be swapping out all the time. So the Phillips that's in here is usually enough to do that. So 2 knives, always got 2 knives going. One blade will get down. Try to keep it flip-flop, so I'm always like, I never have to think. Sometimes one knife's on the top of the ladder, one knife is in here, so I just keep going. Oh, I didn't even talk about smoothies. Here we go. This is my typical smoothie setup here, and I have, well, there's a store right there. So obviously, that's where you get the Roman 880, and that's where I get my smoothies. And then you go to the other big paint store, they carry those. You can order all the stuff, of course. And I carry a small one, metal blade. So metal's great for getting really tight and I like this one because it fits in there. It's easy. Obviously, you can go scrape any little nicks off the wall or something, but it's fairly small, and it's a perfect 90. So in the right circumstances, you can get it right in there. But I don't really use this for cutting. Almost never. It's just once in a while type of deal. In certain situations, you got to get it close. Or what it really, I'll go into it. So this is my actual, see if I can get close on this. Yeah, there you go. I mean, you can see it's all right there. It's all scarred up, right? Look at all, oh my goodness. So you see that? So this is the one that I actually do almost all of my trimming. So so this is the look here. You'll be up against the wall. Like I said, usually you'll be cutting with that blade about like that, and you'll be coming. But there's way more to it, but one-handed, we're just gonna say that's the standard kind of trimming. I can go real quick why you do this. This one, let's see if we can, and I have an even better one. So usually I carry, of course I took it out of my pocket because a lot of times I'll have one in my back pocket of my pants, but let's see if we can see this one. But either way, the one you're using for all the smoothing, like the whole time, bubbles, all that, is usually a relatively clean and pretty one. And I only use it to smooth and do all that stuff, push the corners in, and then this one that's all marred up is the one I use all of my cutting. Because when you cut this, what happens is you're cutting here and then it scrapes along here. And then if you use this one to smooth, you're gonna get scratches all over anything that's dark, any sort of dark paper, anything not white. These little marks will scratch. Now you can sand it. I'm not gonna go into this one yet. I'm sure people have seen these. They sell these, they're extremely heavy. These work okay for only a couple things. Inside a doorway, or where you need the funny angle. It is nice to have this. You can cut a big edge, but in general, I don't use these. They're too heavy, too bulky. But, okay, my cutting smoothing. Just like this. Of course, they always tell you to pull. You gotta pull the bubbles, right? Sure, that's great practice. Wonderful practice. But you will find yourself pushing like that up into the corners, that'll happen. So don't freak out about it. Start slow on the pulling and the pushing of the bubbles. Start slow and then work from there. You're gonna see right away, but there's just so much to it. So I can't just say it all in just this video to start with. So here we are. This is my typical setup. Smoothies, they fit in here, 3 of them. I usually have 3 plastic smoothies. I got one more. I wish I had it, but it's still in the truck. So this one's pretty square. You see, I've been using it a little bit. You see, I do got a little nick there. So these ones, what I'll do is I usually sand them down. But you can see it's pretty good. I will usually, so I can see this is a good example. This is exactly what happens. So I'm sure what happened is I got in a pinch in a corner. I was on a ladder and I was like, I got to cut this corner. You know what I mean? I just got to cut it. I don't want to get down. I don't have my one that's all marred up. So I'll probably use this a couple times. And of course I got a little nick in it. But in general, yes, try to use that just for smoothing. Okay, let's put it all back in. Typical, so let's just go through it real quick. Primer, 90% of the time. 80%, 90% of the time on that. Typical pouch. I'm gonna go over here to, right here, the best laser level. Here we go, known to man. There it is. And the key with this, I do a lot of ceilings, and that's mainly the key, is you can set up and you make the ceilings perfect. So, or grids, or if you got into accent walls, you know, where you wanted to do, you know, because a lot of people in my, they'll do that sort of thing too. So let's say, you can look at that wall. So let's say you're doing an accent wall and you're putting, you know, your pieces at an angle, then you could do something like this too. But in general, you have to have a good laser. And for my money, this is it. It does all three: horizontal, vertical, and the ceiling. So super key, super key. Then we're gonna go into, I'll try to go quicker. I didn't expect to, I do like to talk, but I didn't expect it to be this hard to get through all this stuff. So here we have what I use, my straight edge. It's just by far the best thing out there. It really is. It has, for one, it's got a tape measure on there. You can cut this side super straight. They do make like this knife that rides in the track. I've never really used that. It does have a little, see if we can see it, yeah. So you see this little bead. It has like a nice little rounded, right in there. Let's get my blade. So obviously it switched around, but so when you actually do the table trimming and all that, you'll be using straight blades for the most part. You can either hold them in your hand. I use this. It just saves your hand. But the way I do it, I just go real quick. So you can rest against this guide here, and so you push it down and you go like that, and you can see my hand stays at the same. Obviously you wouldn't cut across the grain and all that, or else you'd screw up your cut. But you'd be cutting like this, you know, straight down the table. But you put it in here. You're gonna hold the good thing is you can ride right along that, and you see that angle, so I tip it in just tiny bit, and so you can keep it the same angle. You don't want to do this kind of stuff, or you don't want to start like this and then finish like that. That's why if you have something where you can't guide, this is obviously exaggerating, but you can have a tendency to go like this. And literally, if you go like this and you end up like that, well, your whole cut is messed up. I mean, I always tell people, like a 1/16 of an inch, I mean, in my world, is gigantic. So, yeah, pretty much you'll get good. I mean, you got to be able to, that's my other joke is, you know, I mean, I cut a pencil line in half. That's pretty much it. So you'll come down here, keep it pretty much the same angle, use this, nice and handy. Okay, we're moving on for the beginning. My little quick beginning. But super good, and it has padding right here. Padding on the bottom. If I had a piece of paper on here, I could show you. But I'll do a whole trimming one a little later. But I'm just getting rolling on this thing. Like I say, I install every day, every day, all day. So this is what I do. Just wallpaper for now. I get into a little bit of window graphics and stuff like that, but okay. So it's padded, and you can take the paper, and if you go like that, you can slide the paper because it's padded on the bottom, and it'll grab the paper. Also, it won't slide back and forth, which is the key. I can show you. So I have 3 straight edges, or if you use like a typical, you also, like if you use a regular level from, you know, big box store, let's say you got a big blue level, right? The bummer with those is they get the edges, that metal, aluminum edge. If you rub that on your paper, it'll leave like a dark line. It'll leave a dark line on there, and it's not like pencil. You'd be surprised. You try to get it off, it won't come off. But anyways, this has padding on it. So in general, a lot of people, like anybody doing, you'll see if you go into like a sign shop or something, they'll have this type. And right here, it's, you see the padding sticks out just, I mean, it's tiny, a 32nd probably, but in general, it keeps the metal off the paper. Okay, and this is just longer than the 6 feet. So I can start past the edge and I don't have to worry, and it goes past the edge here, and I don't have to worry about every time being like right at the edge, whatever. So it's just longer, which it's great for cutting. The only drawback is you can have a tendency to walk around the table and catch the edge. And then worst case, it would fall off and hit the floor. But so far, hasn't really happened. And that can happen. Let me show you. So the trestles, so these trestles, they're made to hold your straight edge under here, but same thing, straight edge actually hangs out. You can hit this and knock it off, maybe on the floor. So I know, but that part's a tiny bit of a drawback that it's wider than the table, but the fact that it hangs out each side and you don't have to worry about the actual cuts is not a problem. So what I would do, let me go around. So when you're done cutting, you can just put it across the table like that, not worry about it. Okay. So we are gonna set it in my little, in the holder there. Okay, so we went through all of primer, paste, pouch, miscellaneous. I'll add some mildew stuff here and there, just for a little extra. You know, I'll put a few drops in, just a little peace of mind, like, okay, I put in some mildew inhibitor or whatever. Not going to get into actual putting this, you know, that would be after you paste. That can help you keep paste off certain things you don't want to. Oh yeah, there's a paint stick. So anyways, that's where you get the guards right there. And put that back. Obviously you're gonna have painter's tape, and then so if you're working from this side to the right, I'm right-handed, and usually I'll have a 2-bucket setup here, and top bucket will be open, and it'll have, I'll go into all this when we actually get into pasting a piece and booking times and, you know, maybe types of wallpaper, things like that. So this is going to, usually I have a 2-bucket setup, and you'll have rollers in here, normal painting rollers, and they'll hang on the edge, and you dip them in, and then you roll your paste. I use a 9-inch one, which is like the standard size, and then I have the little, like a 4-inch one. I kind of keep on both sides, and that way I can do little edges, or, you know, let's say you're under a pedestal sink and you just got to hit it real quick again because things are drying out. Then I use the little roller and go about it that way. So the only last thing I'm gonna show you is like I don't know, 3 or 4 typical I like the paint stick because it holds my tape on there. I'll show you 3 or 4 types, typical types of wallpaper here. Trying to go quick. So this stuff seems, I mean, it seems easy for me, but it's a little hard to explain. I can't explain everything right out the gate. But we'll go into these. Okay, so here we have what I would call paper, right there on the front, all right? So you've got typical birds and branches, I call it, or vines, things like that. This is a little more of a, you know, little funky wild pattern there. This is kind of in the middle. So, but most of your paper is, I don't have a tape out here, but you're going to be in that 21-inch kind of range. That's super, super common. Either 20 and a half, 21, 21 and a half. Some are 19, and, you know, but let's just say 21. You know, you can see these 3, what I call paper. These are also the easiest to install. So, but we'll go into all that. There's, so there's half drop, and you'll have straight drop. So straight, let's see if this, so this one's straight. So straight just means every piece is the same piece. You know, you cut every one, you start the same as far as pattern. And then if you have a drop match, you will have, let's see if this one says, I don't see it on that one, but if you have a drop match, that just means what we call it AB. So you'll have 2 different pieces where you cut. You'll cut one piece, and then the next piece is usually like a foot down to where the pattern matches, but there'll be 2 different pieces. So it'll be AB, AB, that type of thing. Okay, let me get rid of the paper. That's what I call it. Then if you get into like vinyls, or there's still a ton of paper that this would be the next typical size. We're up in about 27. So 27, probably my favorite. It's easy to deal with. Obviously, it's half of a 54-inch piece, but it's easy to deal with, and it still covers a good bit of area. Like these, I mean, you're putting up a lot of panels, you know, 20 inches wide. This one, at least, you know, 3 pieces. A lot of times it gets you across the, you're all the way across the powder room wall type of thing. So 27-ish, that's going to be your next super common. This is a vinyl, super, in my experience, super incredible brand. I mean, the seams, they disappear on this stuff. This is absolutely, and it's non-woven. We'll go into all that later. This is a tremendous, I got pictures of this. I got pictures of everything. But right now I'm only uploading videos. But this is a tremendous, this is sort of really, let me get a piece. This is a really, what I call embossed pattern, or a ton. It's like it's, you can see it's super thick, and I like this stuff. Just because every one of those that I've put up, I've had good results. And that's, when it comes to installing, people are like, oh, what do you like the best? I'm like, well, I like the one that installs the best and the seams essentially disappear. That's what I'm after. Basically, non-woven or paste the wall. But there's so much more we can explain all of that. And this is your next 36-inch. Most of your, this would be super common for grass. So 27 too, but a lot of your grass is going to come in the 36-inch. Perfect, absolutely perfect size for grass cloth. And then a lot of it's, let's see, I think this technically says, so this, yeah, it says double cut. I'm going to go into all that. Very, very, very rarely do I double cut. But anyways, it's not for today. It says trimming required. Trimming just means you cut the edges. Mainly on grass, what happens is the edge just gets rounded over or it gets curled like that. So if you cut like a 1/2 inch off, it just makes it so pretty. So right there you can see it curling. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you see how it looks like that? See how the edge is bending down? Right there. That's a good example of it. And then, so if you cut it back, you can get rid of that little swoop. You can get rid of that. Also, like I said, there's just a lot more to go into. But if you're gonna do grass on a wall, you will be, for the most part, balancing the wall. That's kind of what we say in the, paper hangers in the industry. And it'll be, so you don't want 3 feet, 3 feet, 3 feet, and like that much of a piece to get to your edge. So you could either start off with like a decent piece and then maybe do, maybe you'd be like this much, and then you'd have 2 3-footers and that much, something like that. Or you would make them all the same. Ideally, they'd all be the same, but you can't go cutting chunks of grass off and throwing it away if you can't use it either. So a lot of times it is like you start with 1 foot, you'll do like 3 panels, you end with 1 foot. That's not a bad look as long as it's, if I had to give you one tip, I'd say just start in the center and work your way out, as long as you don't end up with something like that. And then a lot of times you'll be turning the corner, so you'll be like 3 feet, 3 feet, 3 feet, and then the 1 foot doesn't look bad if it's 1 foot on each side, and then you turn the corner with 2 feet. So from a distance, you got 1 there and 2 there. So from a distance, it still looks like this big piece from like this vantage point. But there's a lot to that. I'll be able to explain it a lot more when I'm actually in front of a wall and we can look at it, and then I can be like, hey, that's what I'm talking about, balancing. See, I cut them all, instead of being 3 feet, I cut them all 29, 29, 29, that type of thing. So, okay. So we're just gonna wrap it up. Of course, if you have any questions, I'm just starting the channel, but this is what I do. So I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So I've done thousands of walls, and probably, maybe even, I don't know. I've done hundreds and hundreds of rooms. So, and I do this every product. I've done all these. I've done the highest of the high-end products, all the way down to some of these are literally, $125 a roll. I've got stuff that is $65 a roll. And what's funny is I found some stuff that's $65 a roll. I absolutely loved it. And I went and bought 6 more rolls just because it was some of the best stuff I've ever put up. But most of these, 125, 150, that's kind of your typical. I'd say 150 is just your average, like paper, 20-inch type paper. This stuff gets pricey. Grass gets fairly pricey. And there's so much more. Anything by the yard. Printed grass will eventually be at the So you have this, like if this had vines on it or birds or something, or essentially the mural is on the grass and it's untrimmed, that's the highest of the high. But I do all that too. I do everything. Okay, let me back up. Here we go. Well, thank you. I didn't think it would take that long to really rush through my initial kind of table setup. But like I said, if you got any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer. Okay.